don't know who needs to hear this, maybe it's you, but connection is way more than just about snuggles and playtime. And let me explain. So I was recently coaching a parent inside of my private parent coaching community, the Mom Sisterhood. And in the midst of her talking about her child's behavioral issues, she goes, I don't get it, Dr. Jasmine. Like, I feel like I'm doing everything. I feel like I am doing all the things that you recommend and connecting with her, and nothing really is working. And so my ears perked up. I said, well, connection, tell me more. What does that look like for you? And she's like, well, we watch movies together, we snuggle, I read books, I spend quality time with her, but nothing seems to be working. And here is what I had to help her understand and shift her mindset around, was the idea of connection. Sure, yes, and I'm always advocating for this. It is so important to spend intentional, quality, one-on-one time with our child as much as we can, right? That often includes child-directed play and just basically quality time, right? That is so important in not only preventing behavioral issues, but enhancing the overall connection that you have with your child. And so you'll often hear me talk about those things, but what I don't think we talk enough about is that connection is way more than about those things, right? Those things are great, but connection also looks like taking time to circle back after a difficult moment. And I think this often gets overlooked. And I know, I get it. We are busy, we are overwhelmed as parents, but one way to strongly connect with your child is to take time after difficult moments when everybody's calm, connected, circle back, right? We want to run back around the block and say, you know what, earlier we had a really hard time, right? And I want to make sure that we start working better as a team. This is important to me. So I want to know, what was that experience like for you? And how can we problem solve and plan for next time? This is what connection looks like, right? Because you're sending your child a very clear and strong message that we work as a team and we problem solve as a team. And so I am going to spend time making sure I understand what that experience was like for you, what feelings came up, what was the story, right? Because oftentimes in the heat of the moment, we're just trying to get through. So unless we circle back and take time to process all of that, we're not really getting to the heart of the issue, and that's oftentimes why these patterns persist. So number one way to connect with your child on a much deeper way is to simply and consistently circle back to difficult moments, with the ultimate goal being to connect with your child and then plan for next time. The number two best way to connect with your child on a deeper level is to take time to ask your child for their feedback, to ask them very bluntly, how am I doing as a parent? This is one of those questions we don't often ask as parents, if at all, right? And it's not to say we ask this like every day, every week, but take time, every now and then, whenever it feels appropriate, to ask your child for their honest feedback. But the most important part of this is to be mindful of your reaction to their feedback, right? Because if you respond defensively, I didn't say it that way, or you know better, you know what I mean, right? Like, it's so easy when somebody gives us constructive feedback to get defensive. So you gotta be mindful of your response and really just take time to listen. And you take it with a grain of salt, but ultimately what you are telling your child is that their perception of you matters to you, right? Their experiences matter, that you want to take time to hear their feedback so that you have information on whether or not you need to pivot or do things a little bit differently. So just ask your child, how am I doing as your mommy or your daddy or your grandparent, right? How am I doing? Has there ever been a time where I made you feel scared or made you feel less than? Is there anything I can do better? Or, what has been your experience in the family since, brother has entered our family? I know it's different, but tell me, how is it going for you? Just, taking time to check in with them, but on a very deeper level that we often don't talk about from a day-to-day basis. And then having the courage to, of course, listen and take in that feedback, even if it's a little painful to hear. Along those same lines, another great way to connect with your child on a deeper level is to say sorry and take time to understand how your mistake affected them, right? I don't think we say this enough. And it's not to say we over apologize and we're walking on eggshells, but there's times in parenting where we're like, oh, I wish I didn't say it that way, right? I didn't show up as my best self. So taking time to circle back, and again, that could be, during those conversations where you're talking with them about a difficult moment, but taking time to say, you know what, I'm sorry. I didn't show up at my best self, and I'm sorry. I have a feeling that impacted you. Can you let me know what that was like for you? And ultimately sending the message that you take accountability for the way that you respond, right? I'm always telling my children, it's my job to be the calm one in the relationship, right? It's my job to manage my feelings. That's not your job. And when I struggle with that, I'm gonna let you know, like, hey, mommy made a mistake and I'm sorry. What was that like for you? How did you feel when I yelled or whatever, right? Just taking time to bluntly say, I'm sorry, is such a wonderful way, not only to model for your child how to say sorry and apologize and take accountability for mistakes that happen inevitably in relationships, but it's also such a wonderful way to build intimacy, build trust, and connection in the relationship. Another way to deeply connect with your child is to take time to simply coach them through difficult moments. I know we're not always going to get this right, but whenever possible, if we can take time and our energy to coach them through difficult moments, right? To see them and to validate their emotional experience and take time ultimately to guide them through how to problem solve. To say, wow, this is a hard time. We're having a hard moment right now. Our feelings are really big. I'm gonna take a deep breath. I know we can do this. I know we're gonna get through this, and I'm right here with you. Or, what was that like for you? You guys both want the toy at the same time. Let's slow down. Let's think this through. How can we solve this so that it's a win-win for everybody, right? The key to coaching is to use language that's very we-oriented, right? We're a team. We're working on solving a problem, and we're doing it together. This is not about, just go to your room, or just be quiet, right? Or stop that, give it back to her, right? Whenever possible, when we can take time to coach our child, which is really about guiding them through difficult moments, we are inevitably building a stronger connection with them, right? Because they come to trust, okay, wow, mommy, daddy, they can handle my intense feelings. They can handle when things don't go well, right? Like, they're sturdy in this. I can look up to them and look for their guidance, and they're with me. They're on my side through this, right? I'm not a bad kid. I'm not a bad person. My mommy and daddy or whoever, they see beyond that, right? This is not about me as a person. This is about just solving a problem. And wow, okay, like, I can look at this differently, right? We're shifting their perspective, and they're shifting the way that they see themselves, and ultimately the way that they see us as their caregiver and parent through these daily interactions that are inevitably going to happen. And big caveat, we're not going to get this right all the time, okay? This is never about perfect parenting, okay? But whenever possible, when we coach our child through these hard moments, I want you to know that you are also connecting with them. Another way to connect with your child is to set boundaries, but then whenever it makes sense, to explain the why behind your limit, right? It's not enough oftentimes to just say, don't do that, or do this, or go there, or whatever, but take a little bit of time and a little bit of intention to help them understand the world around them and why you're making certain decisions. Because I think that as adults, we are operating from our adult brain that has a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and it's easy to take for granted our perception of the world, right? To say, well, I see it this way, this is the way it needs to be done, and you should just come along with the program, right? You should already understand this. Just come on. You know what I mean? And so whenever we can take time, whenever it makes sense to explain the boundary, explain the rules, and bonus points, if you can take some time to get their feedback, well, what do you think? How do you think we should, respond in this way or act, or what do you think we should do? That is going to build connection. And along those lines, asking whenever it makes sense for your child to lead, asking for their feedback or their input, and even taking some time to say, you know what? Thank you for asking that question. This just happened to me the other day where my daughter kept asking me, well, why? Well, why can't I say that? Well, why? And she kept asking, and I'm like, well, why can't she say that? What is the problem? And then I had to circle back and say, you know what? I'm sorry. I think you're right. I appreciate you asking me about this because now I think about it differently. And actually, you're right. Why? That is silly. And you know what? We're going to change course. We're going to pivot. That is inevitably building trust, intimacy, and connection in the relationship. And the last way to deeply connect with your child is to allow for a lot of opportunities for them to take the lead. If you think about it, kids don't get a lot of opportunities in the day-to-day world to be the leader and decide things and make choices. There's a lot of things that are inevitably decided for them, and it makes sense, right? So it's not to say that we change that part, but I am willing to bet there are so many more opportunities in your day-to-day life where your child can be the leader. One of those being play. They should always be the leader in play as long as everything's safe. But outside of that, are there, simple choices you can give them or simple questions that you can ask to get their ideas and get their input and allow them to make a choice, because you are inevitably enhancing connection when you do those things. So I hope this helped you see that connection is more than snuggling and playtime. Connection is so much more deeper than that. It looks like taking time to circle back to difficult moments and plan for next time, or taking time to say, I'm sorry, I didn't handle that the right way. I made a mistake and I want to know how that impacted you. Or can you give me some feedback here? Or thanks for letting me know that. You know what? I'm going to think about that. Or actually, I'm thinking about that a little bit differently, and I appreciate you helping shift my mindset around that, right? Anytime we can do some of those things as parents, we are inevitably enhancing connection. And I want you to remember that if we're looking for shifts in our child's behavior, it's going to be really hard to see those changes if we're not connecting with our child in these ways, right? Behavior and parenting is all about a relationship. And so we have to see our connection with our child in these deeper ways in order to affect change in their behavior and in the overall family system. Now, if you are looking for more guidance on building more cooperation without having to do all the things I know you hate, like yelling and punishing, then be sure to check out my free discipline workshop, because I walk you through my research-based methodology on how to see more connection, see more teamwork in the family without, again, having to yell and dish out those threats. I go through how to help coach your child to manage their big feelings, and ultimately how to shift that system around so that we see better behavior in weeks, not months. Okay, so go to themomspsychologist.com/workshop. If you're tuning in on YouTube, the link will be in the description. And let me know down in the comments, was this helpful? What are some ways that you have found a deeper connection with your child outside of all the things we love, like play and snuggle, which I love that, right? I love a good snuggle session. But are there ways now, maybe after listening to this episode or just thinking about it, like, are there ways that you connect with your child in deeper ways? Let us know down in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. That is it for this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.